Next, we're delighted to have a chance to hear from Jeffrey Clayton with the American Bail Coalition. Welcome.
Commissioner, Commissioner Jones, Deputy Commissioner Harrell, I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to appear here today, and it's always a pleasure to work with you moving forward on these issues. The American Bail Coalition is a trade association of surety insurance companies. By our best guesses, our member companies have 15,000 agents under appointment across the United States. We work in every state where surety bail is legal and where we can have a positive impact in the community. As we've heard, the use of financial bail conditions, whether it be surety, bail bondsman, or financial bail conditions in general, is an important tool for judges to have. And so certainly the conversation around the country about eliminating all financial conditions of bail, I think, is an extreme one. Former U.S. Solicitor General Paul Clement said that bail is a liberty-promoting institution as old as the Republic, and I happen to agree with that. I think bail is constitutional. I have no doubt that it is, and I think the issues are more in the line of due process than certainly bail. The Little Hoover Commission has also looked at bail in 2013 and found that it's the oldest evidence-based form of release in the criminal justice system. So I don't think there's doubt that bail should continue to exist. My dog, her name's Little P, and she's been sick for the last week. And like this panel, we've had a lot of symptoms put out here of a problem that I think is larger. 2 weeks ago, I presented to the California Supreme Court panel on bail reform. And my goal there and my goal today is, how do we diagnose the problem? And what is the problem? How do we figure out what the larger problem that is causing all these issues is? And I think I figured it out. There's really two things going on in my view. You've got a market imbalance. California is a buyer's market for bail. It is the cheapest place to get bail across the United States of America. And candidly, without bail agents, I couldn't afford bail in California, and I'm not sure anybody could. And that's unique. They're the highest bails in the United States. I think the fact that bail agents can charge as little as $0 for bail is creating a race to the bottom on the regulatory side. On the judge's side, I think the bonds continue to increase because, one, there's no certainty in how much the bail is, and because of the race to the bottom, judges continue to jack it up. And so when you have people getting out of jail on multiple $100,000 and only coming up with a couple of $100, I think judges are aware of that. And so I think you have this push going both ways. You have a race to the bottom on one side, and you have a race to the top by the judges. And what that causes is it leads to these symptoms. It leads to competitive things that violate the state's regulations. And I think it creates incredible pressure on the agents. And I think that is the reason why we're seeing these problems. And I think that's new. And I think, we've talked about the issue of rebating or whatever you want to call it. But, regardless of where you come down on that, I think that is one issue that I think certainly needs to be looked at. There's a market imbalance in my view, I would say. On the bail setting side, in terms of the judges, we've looked at this, and I happen to agree with the judge who's sitting here. There's complete chaos in terms of the bail schedule, in the state of California. We've done some analysis, and as the judge said, you find bails being 20 times higher in neighboring counties for the same offense, and that doesn't make any sense. From our perspective, sunshine in the bail setting process perhaps should be the way we go. Right now, the judges simply can just set whatever schedule they want. There's no required process. There's no required input. There's no required consideration of any particular factors, such as are FTAs going up in a particular class of offenders or class of offenses where, perhaps we need to take a look at that. And every time there's an FTA in the state of California, it costs the state of California, and that's something to keep in mind. And I think if we improve the consistency of the schedule process, I think we'll get better results. And perhaps, a statewide bond schedule that's been discussed, could be one idea. I think the penal code needs improvement on the due process side. I told the judges that as well. It's confusing. There's different rules if it's a warrantless versus a non-warrantless arrest. There's the 8-hour appeal by an attorney to say someone can't afford their bail. Is that being applied? Is that being used? And so I think the gold standard, and I think what the plaintiffs' lawyers in these cases around the country would tell you is the City of Riverside case, which basically the Supreme Court anticipates that you will get in front of a judge within 48 hours. Now, we've seen jurisdictions like Harris County, Texas, where they're being accused of running an unconstitutional bail system. However, they get 83% of all defendants in front of a judge within 24 hours. So can we shorten the process to let judges smooth these cases out? And if that means putting them on supervision, if that means OR release of these folks, we agree that's entirely appropriate. Bail is not for everybody. We do our best work in high-risk cases. We allow high-risk people to get out of jail when they otherwise wouldn't. And that is the true value, I think, of bail. And the final point I'll make is one that was addressed by Shelley, but I think it bears being repeated, which is, 62% of people in California's jails have not been convicted of the present offense. That is correct. However, judges are obviously considering the prior offenses. But my point, I guess, would be non-monetary holds in this country is the number one reason people are in jail in this country, period. That is undisputed. Of course, an ACLU study of the Los Angeles County Jail bore that out. Only 12% of defendants who had been in jail for 7 days could theoretically bail out. And that doesn't take into account the idea that some lawyers are advising them to stay in jail to get a time-served deal. So really, I think, what I tell legislators around the country is what we really need to look at is these non-monetary holds. And I think the Khalif Browder case, if you're familiar with that, is a good example of that, which is why should a 16-year-old kid who's on probation for stealing and steals a backpack go into Rikers Island and be put in solitary confinement for 440 days? That's egregious, but that proves our point, which is he was not bailable, he was in on a low-level case, and was left to sit and rot. And I think, for policymakers, that is a critical thing to look at, particularly in the state of California. And so to conclude, I would say we are a partner in this process. We do not advocate that everybody should be on a monetary condition of bail. That said, we are a critical partner in the California criminal justice system, and I certainly look forward to working with you, Commissioner. And we've certainly heard that there are issues, and we are aware of that. And I think, perhaps last year we couldn't get to a place where we could all agree that, some additional funding and reforms are needed. But I think we agree with that concept, I think, and I look forward to working with you, and hopefully this year we can get there. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a quick question before I lose the thought. So the statistic has been put forward that this past year, roughly 60% of those that are held in jails are held waiting trial or sentencing. And your statement is that the lion's share of those folks are held not because of their inability to pay bail, but for other reasons. Can you give us what that distribution is? I mean, within that 62%, and is there any study or data I can look to further understand that?
Yeah, and thank you for the question, Commissioner. Yes, and the study was done of the Los Angeles County Jail, and they pointed, and I'll provide this to you. And what they did is they just said, well, 7 days is probably the key window when somebody's languishing, and let's find out what's keeping them in. And they go through the list of the reasons why those folks are in there. And candidly, this research isn't being done. A report by John Jay College was released saying there's 34 areas of research we need to do in this space of pretrial justice. And so what I've been doing when I come to California is encouraging the agents to go to their local sheriffs and pull this data. But candidly, it doesn't exist. And if we had it, I think we could better understand where to go in terms of the reforms. But the Los Angeles study is really the only one nationally that I'm aware of that looks at this, and certainly there probably